Welcome to Discover Barnstable, the official podcast of the town of Barnstable, a podcast where you can meet the people who steward the programs and services that connect us to our quality of life here in the town of Barnstable. We invite you to join the conversation as we navigate municipal government and our community pathways to help you discover Barnstable. On this episode of Discover Barnstable, we are joined by Erin Logan. Erin started as a temp employee for the town of Barnstable in 2016. In 2017, Erin began working full-time in the Planning and Development Department. And in 2021, Erin moved to the licensing division and took on the role of licensing assistant. In this new position, Erin supported the licensing director, consumer affairs officer, licensing authority board members, and the public through the application process, as well as provided support for daily licensing tasks. In December of 2022, Erin stepped into the position of Interim Deputy Director of Asset Management and Licensing. Erin is currently supporting the licensing division in both assistant and assistant director level capacities. Erin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
So let's dive into this. So you took over for our former podcast co-host, Liz Hartsgrove, last December when she moved on to a new position. But you've been doing licensing for quite a bit, and there's a lot to go over. And I think it's one of those programs that unless you are a restaurant owner or own a business, you might not have too much to do with you, but your job is all over the place and does a lot of different things. So let's start with the basic structure of the licensing division.
We have Director Anthony, who is the asset management director who oversees the licensing director, if you will. And then there is a licensing assistant.
Which is kind of two roles you're filling right now. Your interim asset management, assistant director of asset management, and the licensing director. So when Liz left, you kind of took on both of those roles, which is a lot for you. And so David Anthony is the department head that kind of oversees everything. And then there's you. And then we have a consumer affairs officer. Let's talk about Officer Kelsey and what he does.
Yeah, so Officer Kelsey supports not only licensing, but inspectional services for just to ensure compliance with licenses. So he will go out and conduct compliance checks. If I receive a complaint from a citizen, I will send him out to check out a business. We are kind of in this place where we're trying to develop support for our local license holders. So maybe a bar owner is having trouble with dispersing crowds at the end of the night. And so maybe we send out BPD at night and take a drive by and kind of assist in that way. So his role is crucial. He's basically the person making sure that people are operating within their license.
Mm-hmm. And that is a big responsibility he has, and I know that the two of you work extremely closely together. He's, Erin, for everybody who's listening, Erin's office is right outside of my office, so I see her every day, and Officer Kelsey and you're either on the phone with each other, he's in the office, and you guys are talking about all sorts of things that might be going on. Yeah. And then after the consumer affairs officer, there is the actual licensing authority, which is the board. Right. How many members are on the board?
So right now we have 5 members in total. The board has gone through some transitions where their long-term chair, Martin Hoxie, who served the board for over 20 years, has recently resigned, understandably. So we're, new folks are stepping into the role of chair and vice chair and clerk. They almost share this position with the town manager. Some of the licenses that we issue, the authority is the town manager. So taxi permits, private parking lots, and outdoor dining, those are all governed by the town manager. Whereas restaurants, car dealerships, liquor licenses, correct, junk dealers, those are all overseen by the actual licensing authority, the elected body. Or the appointed body, I apologize.
Correct.
So they're imperative in reviewing the applications that come in for approval. We bring matters, complaints to them. So they certainly have one of the most important roles in the division.
Mm-hmm. They also, they do one-day beer and wine licenses, one-day liquor license, entertainment licenses. They do a lot, and they meet monthly.
They do. So they meet monthly. Another piece to licensing is the special one-day licenses that you talked about. And so this is for folks that are having events on public or private property where they're going to be serving alcohol, or perhaps something like the Fun Box that came to Cape Cod Mall. That was an entertainment license that they needed. So we definitely kind of have our hands a little bit, we definitely overlap, work closely with the health department, and the building department, but those relationships are key as well.
So right now you're in the middle of renewals for next year. And so, aside from the one-day licenses that you do, all of the businesses like the car dealerships and the restaurants and the bars and things like that, they have to renew their licenses every year. And what are some of the things that you look for in these renewals?
So standard protocol in renewal is we need to ensure that the businesses have insurance, general liability, liquor liability if it's applicable. Class 2 auto dealers need to be sure that they have a surety bond in place. And the state also requires that each business owner within the town of Barnstable files a workers' compensation affidavit annually, regardless of whether you have employees or not. That is a state requirement, not a town requirement. So we use the renewal process as a place to capture that. Through this, using the OpenGov portal, we are somewhat making it easier for them. The information rolls over every year. All they simply need to do is renew it, attach their forms, make their payment. That information gets put onto a licensing authority consent agenda for approval, unless we feel that there is a license that maybe kind of stands out, needs a little extra review by the authority. And so that's essentially the process. So they don't need to come to a hearing. They can sit back and wait till they receive their new license in email.
Right. And one of the, if a business, when they're doing the renewal and there's a question about it, or there's a problem or an issue that's brought to your attention, you will hold show cause hearings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for the most part, we had one recently, a license holder that was called in violation. It was brought to the attention of the fire department that there may have been some issues. So we, sent a team out. Officer Kelsey went out with inspectional services, with the fire department and with the health department. They create a report. They submit the report in part to me as part of the review process, and we determine whether or not we should have an informal meeting just between myself and Officer Kelsey in the office with the license holder. And if it warrants, in this particular case, it was a life safety issue. So we determined that an informal meeting at staff level was not appropriate, and then the board should hear it for a show cause. So those are the instances that do take place.
Yeah, and I think it's important for our listeners and our viewers to know that the licensing authority is, it's about the safety and well-being of the businesses, but as well as their patrons. You're kind of the place to make sure that, that everybody's safe and that everyone's in compliance and doing what they're supposed to do, because people aren't in compliance, that could cause issues. So it's an important, licensing is really, it's an important facet to the town. You mentioned class 2 dealers. Can you just explain what that is? Because people might not know what a class 2 car dealer is.
Sure. And I guess I'll start with actually explaining that a class 1 dealer is a new car dealer. So folks that have agreements with Toyota or Honda. So those folks are selling brand new vehicles with agreements with the manufacturer. Class 2 are used car dealerships. We have somewhere around 35 class 2 auto dealers in Barnstable. And those folks are held to very similar standards to a class 1.
Some of the things that they're required is like they can only have a certain number of used cars on their lots and things like that. So it's
correct. So
those are the things that Officer Kelsey looks for when he goes on a compliance check for a class 2 dealer.
Correct. So they look for things like a lemon law sticker. Mm-hmm. There are logbooks that need to be kept pretty strictly on vehicles that are coming in, what's being traded, what they purchased, what they sold, who they sold it to. it's his job to go out and check that the VINs, match their logbook, that they have the lemon. I think I just said this, the lemon law stickers on their vehicles, that their lot is set up according to site plan review, which really kind of lays the groundwork for how all of the regulatory agencies in the town need to operate.
Mm-hmm. And that makes me think that, the one of the guests we should have coming up, it should be our building inspector, Brian Florence, coming in to talk about site plan review, because I think it's not something that people know a lot about. There's informal site plan review, there's formal site plan review, and that's kind of the start of some of these processes. You go to site plan review to kind of check all your boxes, dot your T's, cross your I's, that kind of thing. So you can kind of make sure that everything is good to go. And then from there you go on. And you talked a little bit about how you work with other departments and divisions in the town. You work with the building department, the health department, inspectional services. It's you guys all have kind of a good working relationship with each other to make sure that all these businesses, are doing what they're supposed to. There's a lot of overlap, would you say? There
is, and it's important overlap. And the role that I'm in now, it is crucial to have good relationships with the folks in the other departments. Diana in the health department, her and I have weekly meetings. They don't always happen depending on what's on the agendas, but we are in constant contact in terms of seating is a big issue. In terms of the building department, they're looking at capacity. So we find ourselves in a position often explaining to, especially in restaurants, with or without liquor, that when you look at your seating versus what the building department allows you for capacity, they're two different things. So we're talking grease trap capacity in terms of seating and life safety capacity in terms of the certificates of inspection. I know that we've touched briefly on OpenGov, but I want to talk a little bit more about that because I think it's new to the town. We've been using it just about a year or so. And I think that's important because it's an easier way for people to apply. It's not a paper application. They don't have to come to the office and see you necessarily. I mean, they can. But let's talk a little bit about, that switch to like a more digital way of doing this. Sure. So OpenGov has actually been used by the town for since I think 2019. Oh gosh, so longer than I thought. Sorry. But just for full disclosure purposes. But licensing, we decided to convert from the applications we were using and move on to the platform because it opens us up to having health review our applications and the building department review our applications. So there are some folks out there that say, you didn't catch me on this last year, but now why didn't you bring this to me before? Well, we can now because we're all talking to each other and we're all seeing the same data. So throughout this last year, we have moved all but 2 types of licenses onto the OpenGov platform. And it's not meant to make people's lives miserable. It's actually meant to make it easier. It eliminates the need to submit a new application every year. So once that first application is in, every year when you renew, it's as simple as hitting a renew button, verifying your information, attaching your forms, paying, and you're done. On a new application, and especially I would say the one-day applications, it's great because we have a place for the Barnstable Police Department and the fire departments to go ahead and weigh in on these events, whether or not additional security is needed or what have you, the oversight. So it's great for that purpose. But I will say last year we opened up alcohol onto the system. It was the first license that we put out there, and I was expecting pushback, and I got none. Oh, that's great. People were actually calling me because they appreciated the system so much better. It's all streamlined, so I don't have to take an application from one platform and save it into our system. It always lives in OpenGov, so I don't have to migrate it to my internal files. Right. And and then share it with the health department or the inspectional services. Correct. They have access to it. They get a notification, because I get notifications for some things for special events. So they get a notification that says there's an application for you to review, and they can go in
It's so great.
It's great.
I think that's probably why I thought it was only for about a year, because
Right.
that's how long I've been using it for.
Right. And,
So-
I guess a piece to that too is, our alcohol licenses are highly protected because of the information that's in those applications. So through the legal department, we have pared it down to just myself and the deputy building commissioner have oversight on those applications. Again, just given the sensitivity of the
100%.
information.
Yep.
And I think it kind of speaks to that as well, like being able to securely upload your application into a platform and not send it to me through email with social
Yes.
security numbers and
Right.
birth dates. And so I think there is a secure piece about that. I don't have a paper file laying around in the office that anybody can just pick up. So I do think it adds a level of security. And let's face it, we have business owners. Just talked to one the other day who's heading down to Florida for a couple months. Well, he can fill his application out while he's in Florida and not have to worry
Right.
about, rushing back to get it done. So there are some great benefits. But I do think it's important that the public know I'm here.
Oh, yeah.
If you're stuck, I'm the first one to raise my hand if I'm stuck and I want somebody to jump in and help me. I want those phone calls. I don't want anybody getting frustrated. And if you don't want to do it electronically, I'm happy to set up an appointment and we can do it together.
That's perfect. So we've talked about all this great licensing stuff, and now we're going to do the bonus question.
Okay.
So if I was to open up your phone and go to your Amazon playlist, what's at the top?
Olivia Rodrigo.
I love that. Is that, influenced by your daughter or your own likes?
No, she 100%. She has an amazing taste in music. She's turned me on to a lot of the music I listen to. And she actually told me the other day that she was notified that I was one of the top 1% listeners of Olivia Rodrigo on Amazon Music. So, she was very proud.
I love that. I love that. Erin, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to make sure our viewers and our listeners know about?
Not as much as just know that with this digital age where we are somewhat disconnected and we're talking through computers and phones, we are here. I am here. Yes, I work remote on Tuesdays, but I'm always a phone call away. I'm, an appointment away, if you will, just to make sure that I'm here. But we're still here working away. Just because you don't see us doesn't mean that we're not here to support the public.
Wonderful. Erin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for spending time with us and listening to Discover Barnstable, the official podcast of the town of Barnstable. We hope you find a new understanding of how your municipal government works for you and our community. Be sure to drop us a line at podcast@town.barnstable.ma.us and let us know what you would like to learn next. Until next time, go Discover Barnstable.